The Tao of Self-Confidence, episode 771. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. Well, hello, friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and today I have an amazing lady on the show today. She's the head of AWS Data Protection and also the CEO of Advancing Women in Product. And I'm really excited to have her on and share her story with us today on self-confidence. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Nancy Wang. Nancy, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much, Sheena, for doing this, giving me this opportunity to address your community. As you probably heard from Sheena's intro, I lead product management for a core team at Amazon Web Services. So very focused on cloud computing and especially data protection and security for our largest enterprise customers. And then one aspect I'm super passionate about outside my full-time job is advancing women. And that's not just women in product, as you can probably tell from the organization's name, but also advancing women in engineering and really any technical discipline. Because if you look at the broader landscape of tech, whether it's startups or larger companies, technical roles often are not well represented, and I'd like to understand why. So what Advancing Women in Product, or Awip, tries to solve is bridging that gap for pathway rather than pipeline. There's so many great organizations out there like Girls Who Code or Girls in Tech that target hiring more junior professionals, but what we see often is such a huge drop-off between individuals with, let's say, 10 years of experience and individuals who attain their first leadership or executive role. And part of what we do as an organization is also host skills-based training workshops that focus on not just skills you need to succeed as an individual contributor, but also as you grow into a leadership role, what are some of the, for example, M&A strategies or team development strategies that you'll need to keep in mind. And so today, after founding the organization in 2017, Awip is now alive in San Francisco, Seattle, Boston, New York, Paris, with presence in London, Berlin, and we're also really excited to announce new chapters in Southeast Asia coming in 2020.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And Nancy, what's your cultural background?
Yeah, so I was born in mainland China and came over with my parents at a young age. So when I was about 6 years old, my father was a postdoc at Cornell University. And so really from an early age, I played with his lab tools. I played with his engineering spectrometer and really grew that love of building things, being inquisitive. And really that's the experience that I encourage a lot of immigrants to do, is get to really know what are you interested early on.
Thanks for sharing that. And Nancy, what'd be your favorite self-confidence quote?
That's a great question, Sheena. It's so difficult to choose from because I have had a lot of amazing mentors, both men and women, who've helped me along the way. And I would have to say maybe a line from Nelson Mandela when he was fighting great adversity in his years getting independence for South Africa is, let your light shine, because it encourages others to let their lights shine. And that's so true in today's world, especially if you're a woman in a technical discipline, because it can seem very daunting if the ratio of you to people who don't look like you or you don't identify with can sometimes be 1 to 10, 1 to 8, right? Is you have to really be yourself. And that's where, I've done quite a few talks on this, is authentic leadership, right? Is you don't try to outfit yourself into someone you're not just to fit a role. The hard part about being a leader is how to make the role fit you, right? And so I work with quite a few emerging women leaders on this aspect.
Thanks for sharing that great quote. And in your own words, how do you define self-confidence?
Self-confidence is the ability to trust yourself. Right? Trust is super important because it's not just, do you trust your colleague to get something done? But if you really trust yourself, even if something can seem really hard or you really can't see the light at the end of the tunnel at that point, you trust yourself to figure it out and get there. And that's what I see as a common theme among the most successful leaders, whether they're male or female, is that they'll trust themselves to get there, to get to the next step. And look, even if it doesn't happen overnight or even within the next year, they have enough belief and strength in themselves to keep on going.
Thanks for sharing that great definition. I totally agree. I know sometimes as women, especially Asian women, we always tend to second guess ourselves or like overanalyze everything. But the more we can just trust in ourselves, regardless what happens, because sometimes we won't get it right the first time, the second time, or the 100th time. We have that ability to keep going and know we'll figure it out along the way. So thanks for sharing that great definition. And Nancy, what was your life like before you discovered self-confidence?
Yeah, I would say having gone through roles and in which, I definitely felt like one of the out group, right? That I wasn't part of the majority group. It was hard, right? But I feel like what got me through was the help of really strong female mentors. So for example, one of the reasons core reasons I attribute Awips success because to grow a nonprofit organization that has no full-time employees. That's actually one of the things that surprised people the most about AWIP is that we do not have anyone full-time staff. All of us are volunteers that serve in different roles. And yet over the last really less than 3 years, because the organization was founded in April 2017, we have grown membership now to 12.6K worldwide with 6 chapters and counting all across the world. So that's the community and also ecosystem that I'm super passionate about building because, for example, our executive advisor, the woman I was referring to, her name is Tatiana Mahmood. She's a phenomenal woman leader. She's currently the chief product officer at Nextdoor. But let me tell you a story because, when she used to be a general manager at Amazon Web Services. And it's due to her intro to the vice president at AWS, who's another amazing woman leader. Her name is Sandy Carter, that I was able to get my current role and, am now one of the youngest head of products for AWS, right? So it's sponsors who give opportunity and open doors, right? Still, obviously, you have to earn your way there, earn your stripes and impress, right, the committee. But it's really important who opens that door for you. And I write a lot about this, for example, in my Forbes Women column, which I'd love to get all of your collective feedback.
Thanks for sharing that. And it's great when women walk each other side by side and like are in this, together because, sometimes women in the workplace can get catty, right? But, there's your story where women actually join forces and help each other out and see the potential in you. And, sometimes that little boost of help can really, give you that confidence, right, to keep going. And especially with, what you've done with advancing women. I mean, it's amazing, right? Like you mentioned, you did it part-time and you have over 12,000 members in like a span of like 2.5 years, which is so amazing. Cause like, most people probably find it hard to do stuff, but you get a little bit of help from everybody to make it work. And, because of that, what's your life been like now?
I would say I'm much more comfortable with myself than I was maybe even 5 years ago. And part of that is that self-realization of what you are good at, what you're not good at, and also coming to terms with things that you're never going to be good at. I remember when I was younger, my mom, she was a math teacher in China. And because she was so good at teaching kids math, her school promoted her to teaching the graduating class, honors math. And so she always had an expectation. And to this day, I feel kind of guilty because she expected me to be a math whiz, which my sister actually was. But math never came naturally to me, right? But having kind of that realization, especially now that I've grown into a people manager, I actually started out as a people manager at Google and now, of course, also at Amazon, is understanding what you're not good at so that when you hire people, right, you're self-confident enough to be like, okay, you're better at this than I am. So I'm happy to coach you in other things, but I expect you to drive this. And that really builds the ownership and also confidence of your employees.
Thanks for sharing that. And, it's crazy, right? Most people think, Chinese people are all great in math. And, it's like, just because, family members good in math doesn't mean you'll always be, right? Like we're all created differently. We all have different skills and talents, but, we can seek the help when we need it. Like you mentioned, you hire people that have the stronger talents that you have, and you can help each other out. And I think, more and more people should be aware of that, right? Like we're all not the same. We all have different skills and talents. We all have something to offer, and we can work with other people to help each other out. So I think that's great that you were able to mention that. And, to the woman who's listening to your episode, she may be in her own journey to self-confidence. What would be that one tip you'd give to her?
I would just say, find Actually, one of my most recent articles I wrote about finding your tribe, because I had the recent opportunity to attend the annual Grace Hopper celebration in Orlando, Florida this year as a speaker. It's really important, regardless of what level you're at, right? Whether you're just started work, right, or you're a senior developer, PM, insert X, and you've been working for 5 or 10 years, right? Or you're, sort of in leadership roles, is really important to find your community that you can connect, share best practices, but also find a sponsor one level up, right? So, finding someone who can open doors for you like mine did to get to that next level is super important. And so that's what I really recommend. And also, again, I feel like in these days, no one ever wants to admit what they're not good at or something that they did wrong. I'll be the first to admit when I screw something up, right? Because it's really important to be honest, not just with yourself, but when others see that you're very genuine, authentic, and honest with, like I mentioned, things you're good at, things you're not good at, and things that you'll never be good at. That's when you start actually building trust with not just your team, but also your peers, and ultimately with the higher ups that, control or rather have a say in how you develop your career.
Thanks for sharing those great tips. And I love how you mentioned owning up to your mistakes. Yeah, because, I know growing up, sometimes we feel like we have to be this perfect person, but, we're human. We all make mistakes. And the more we can admit to it, right? I mean, sometimes it's scary to admit it, but honestly, once you do it, people will understand hey, mistakes happen, right? The best we can do is find a solution to fix it and learn from it for future. And it's actually a lot easier when you admit a mistake versus trying to hide it. So I really like that you mentioned that. And if our listeners wanted to get to know a little bit more about you and what you do and check out some of your work, is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
Yeah, so due to Awip, I have a pretty active presence on social media, mainly being so if you want to check out other pieces I've written for Mind the Product, I've written for Forbes Women, and that's probably the most predictable place that you can find me because I have a column there, and I usually write about topics like women in leadership or women in tech. But I've also done, for example, more technical pieces, new tech trends that I'm super passionate about, like DevOps, microservices. And so really just encourage you guys I love getting feedback from readers. I love getting questions from readers. So if you guys do, you can always drop me in line at nancy@advancingwomeninproduct.org.
Thanks for sharing that. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Nancy, you can also head on over to the selfconfidence.com and search for Nancy's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else that we talked about. And I really just want to thank Nancy today for taking the time to share her story and tips with us on self-confidence. So thank you so much, Nancy.
Awesome. Really appreciate you having me on your show. Yeah, I think especially, I'll just close with this. Out of the women I mentor, and whether it's, East Asian or Southeast Asian, I do feel like society has a certain trope that is created for, people like us, right? That we're less outspoken, more ready to go with the flow or go with status quo. And while that definitely has its merits, but I do want to advocate, sometimes it's a squeaky wheel that gets the grease, right? Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to ask for things. Like one of the most common requests I get from my community is helping them negotiate job offers, right? And especially the salary portion is so important. I mean, obviously, hopefully no one takes the job purely for the money, but money is important, right? Because sometimes, and a lot of it is society ascribes your pay to your self-worth. And so that's where I encourage a lot of my mentees or community to ask for market value, right? Or even above market value. What's the worst that they can say, right, is no. And I just feel like there's so much hesitation in even them being able to ask that question. And so I just want to see kind of all of us not being afraid to express our own voices and really ask for the things that we care about.
Thanks again. And yeah, that's a great tip that you mentioned, especially for women and Asian women. It always feels like shameful if we ask for it, but if we deserve it, why not, right? The worst they could say is no, but at least you went for it versus wondering what if. So thanks for sharing that. And to our listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of the Tao of Self-Confidence. Get your free self-talk tape for building self-confidence by visiting our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits.